So which teammates should you use with Zibai? In this video I'll be explaining how you can build a team for Zibai by explaining her team needs, what does she need and why, and what does she scale with the best. And then I'll help you build some of her best teams for you to maximize your Zibai's damage. Before continuing that though, if you're trying to get Zibai or any of her teammates, I'd recommend getting your Genesis crystals from ldshop.gg. It's a cheap, fast and safe game top-up website that offers top-ups for many games including Genshin Impacts up to 30% cheaper. Check it out in the link in the description or the pinned comment. Alright, so starting off with her team requirements, first of all, she's just going to be a Geo on field, lunar crystallized DPS. That's going to set some very clear requirements for her team. So her team requirements are first of all going to be a Hydra applier. A Hydra applier can be any character that can just apply enough Hydra, and they need to be off field too, because she's going to be the on field character. Second thing you're going to need is that you're going to need a buffer. And when I say buffer, it's mainly just going to be either a defense buffer, elemental mastery buffer, lunar damage bonus buffers. Even damage bonus can be a little useful on her because she does deal a small amount of normal geo damage. So any buffers that can offer that are usually going to be pretty good. She's a main DPS and sort of like a hyper carry. So you definitely want characters on your team, at least one that can give you direct buffs to Zibai, whether it's just stat buffs or damage buffs or anything like that. So that's going to be necessary in my opinion. The last thing you're going to need, which is not fully required but is preferable, is a second geo. A second geo is going to be pretty good with her, just mainly for the geo resonance. It's just going to give you that geo resistance shred, which is pretty good, and it's also going to lock in another element that just doesn't mess up with your reactions. Because added as a note, usually you'd want to avoid like characters who just deal consistent pirate damage or electro damage with her, because it might mess with the Hydra aura on the team, and that could lower your lunar crystallized reactions, which you definitely do not want. So usually you'd want a Hydro and then a Geo. Last character can be a second Hydro or a second Geo, maybe a Cryo, but it's definitely not recommended. So usually you're stuck with having another Geo at least on your team, and you're also going to need a not cry character on your teams. So those are the 4 things you're probably going to need for a team for Zibai. Now a lot of the characters in the game can check multiple boxes of these at once, which are going to be like the premium super good characters. Right now we're going to go through her best teammates in general, and we're going to see which characters tick which boxes, and then we're going to give some final team comps. Alright, so now starting off with your teammate options, you can usually pick any of these as long as you can take all of the requirements I listed. So first of all, her best, general teammate is just going to be Columbina. Columbina is going to tick 2 very important boxes in here, which are going to be Hydra application, also buffing. Hydra application is going to be necessary for her to deal lunar charge, and Columbina can tick that pretty easily because she's going to be applying Hydra damage easily off field. And then she's going to be one of the best buffers, especially for lunar reactions, which Zibai is a lunar reaction main DPS. So Columbina is just going to be giving you that lunar reactions damage bonus, which is going to be super appreciated on Zibai. It's one of the rarest buffs that she can get. So Columbina is definitely going to be one of her best buffers and also one of her best Hydra appliers. If you don't want to go for Columbina, which is usually not a good idea, if you don't want to maximize your Zibai's performance, then C6 Ino is going to be one of the best options too. She's also going to be applying enough Hydra, which is pretty good, and she can also give you some lunar crystallized damage increase, which is going to be heavily appreciated, of course. So yeah, Ino is going to be one of the best substitutions for Columbina if you don't want to use her. Obviously she's going to be much worse, honestly. It's mainly just because of her personal damage, and if you don't have her at C6, I'd say she's going to be much worse. But especially if you have her C6 and you want to use her, she can definitely fill the buffer and the Hydro slots pretty well. If you don't have Columbina and you don't have C6 Ino or Ino in general, your only options are probably just going to be the default just Hydra appliers in the game, which are like Yellen, Xingqiu, even Fiorina and stuff like that. Those are usually not going to be, the best options because there's just going to be simple plain Hydra appliers. Even their damage is not going to be optimal in this type of team specifically, and they're just not made for her specifically. So obviously the team damage in general is not going to be the best thing, but if you don't have Ino or Columbina, then you can definitely use any Hydros. They're just going to fill in the Hydro slot. They're not going to be able to buff you. Maybe Fiorina can give you some damage bonus, but it's not heavily appreciated for Zibai. Now moving on to the Geo options. The best Geo option you want to go for is usually just going to be the 4-star Eluga, especially if you have C6 or at least C4. At C6 or C4, Eluga is going to be able to give you a huge buffs to your Zibai, which is heavily appreciated. At C4 is going to be giving you defense, and at C6 is just going to be increasing your crit rate and crit damage, which is super good and appreciated, obviously. And also your elemental mastery. That on top of the damage bonus from his basic kit and stuff like that. Also, it's going to tick the Not Cry box, which is pretty good. So yeah, it's just going to tick so many boxes. It's going to be a Geo, a Not Cry character, a very good lunar crystallized support support, also very easy to use, so it's honestly the perfect character you'd want to use with Zibai for a Geo character. I would recommend him a lot, and I think she's gonna fall off pretty significantly if you don't use Iluga with her. It's probably one of her best like premium options, honestly. For other Geo options, it's gonna be pretty versatile, honestly. You can use from the range of like shielders, like Zhongli for example, that can just give you a shield and some resistance shred. He can just be a Geo and sort of like a buffer with a small resistance shred. You can use someone like Goru for example, which is probably one of the best options too, especially at C6. Is definitely going to be a top tier support for Zibai. It can give you a lot of defense, it can give you that crit damage, which is going to be heavily appreciated on Zibai. It's just going to fill the Geo slot and also the buffer slot pretty good, and I would recommend him especially as a second Geo if you want to do that. I don't think it's going to be good as like the sole Geo support. I think Iluga just clears everyone here, but Goru can also be decent. You can even use Shilonen for example, especially if you have her C2. She can give you pretty good buffs, and she can definitely be a pretty decent buffer. And yeah, honestly, those are mostly going to be like the characters I would recommend for Geo, at least like utility characters that are going to be actual good supports for Zibai. So if you want to build a team for Zibai, those are the characters I listed. You probably want to make a team out of these. Now there are other like filler characters I would say who don't really, you know, offer anything spectacular, but they're mainly just damage characters or utility characters. It's mainly going to be characters like Shiori for example, who can be a Geo, but she only contributes with her like own personal damage, so she's not really needed for a team for Zibai. But if you ticks all the boxes for example, and you still need to add one more character, you can just add Shiori and she's gonna be better than nothing. Same thing with someone like Albedo for example, can be, you know, it's just a decent filler. Even someone like Inefa for example, she's not my favorite, but I guess she can work. She's gonna mess up with your lunar crystallized ticks a little bit, which I don't like, but in general she can definitely work still, and she can make up for that by just dealing enough damage of her own. And teams with Zibai and Inefa can work pretty well, so she can definitely be a good like filler character too for Zibai. But yeah, in general this is the whole roster I listed. If you want to build a team for her, those are the characters you'd want to pick from. Just make sure you tick all of the 4 or 3 boxes I listed before: a Hydro, a Geo, a non-cry character, and a buffer, and you're gonna be set for the best teams for Zibai. Now for team examples, I would say her best team in general is probably just gonna be like Zibai, Columbina, and then C6 Iluga. For the last character, really can be a flex, so you can go for like Zhongli, which is what I prefer as like a shielder. You know, it's just gonna be easier to play, and also resistance shred, so he's definitely gonna be pretty good. Or you can go with C6 Goru or any filler characters I listed before. You can go Zibai, C6 Aino for example, and then Iluga, and then Zhongli or Goru or whatever. You can go Zibai, Aino, Shiori, and Zhongli if you don't have Iluga for example. That's also gonna be, you know, very usable. If you want a completely free to play team, you can go something like Zibai, Aino, and then Geo MC for example, and then Goru. Even at C0, all of them is gonna work pretty fine. Now her damage is gonna tank. It's gonna be way less than like her premium teams, but that's a good like free to play team, sort of free to play if you have Goru and Aino. If you want to include Inefa, you can go for like Zibai, Columbina, Iluga, and then Inefa. That's also gonna work pretty decently, even though I don't like the scene because Inefa and Columbina are gonna be stealing the show a little bit, so I feel like it's kind of a waste to play them both at the same team. But in general it's gonna be fine too. The team itself is gonna be fine. It's gonna be dealing decent amounts of damage. But yeah, again, you can pick and choose any characters that I listed before. Just make sure all of the boxes are ticked, and usually you're gonna end up with a very good Zibai team. But yeah, that was the video guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. Peace.